This review here, I'm taking a look at the new Chuwi Hi9. So it's an Android 7 tablet, 8.4 inches is the screen size. The screen resolution is rather high, so it's 2560 by 1600, giving a very nice sharp look to the screen. So when you look at it really close, you can't see any pixels with the kind of PPI that this has. And it does have a decent brightness to it. It's fully laminated. And if you have a look at the viewing angles, they're not bad at all. It's IPS, so the blacks aren't super black like an AMOLED panel. There's a little bit of a gray to them, but colors do look good, and the touch response of the screen is good as well. Now up the top, you'll see that we've got a front-facing camera. Now this is 2 megapixels VGA resolution only, and the video quality from that VGA resolution is rather poor, so not very good cameras on this at all. It does have an ambient light sensor, which is great to see. That will automatically control the brightness and does a good job. So up the top, you'll find a micro SD card slot, and it supports cards up to 128 gigabytes I have tested, and you can set it up as internal storage or as portable storage. An Android 7 feature, that is, that it has. So we have a 3.5mm headphone jack. Quality out of this is okay. Did notice a little bit of static on the line. The volume could also be a little bit louder, the output from it. We've got micro USB 2 here for data and charging. Now charge times, approximately 2 hours and 40 minutes to charge the 5000 milliamp hour battery that's on here. So the specs of the tablet, it has a MediaTek MTK 8173. Now that's a quad core with a maximum turbo of 1.9 gigahertz. Personally, I would have liked to have seen the MTK 8176. It's a similar chipset, but it has 2 more cores, and it means the performance of this tablet would just be a lot smoother, and it would run things a little bit better. It's got 4 gigabytes of RAM, which is not bad, 64 gigabytes of storage on there, but it's eMMC 4.5 spec and a very slow drive at that, but more details of that later on here. On the rear, we've got a 5 megapixel autofocus camera that does have a lot of focus problems, especially in video. Again, poor quality from this. The casing on the back, it's plastic. And I have one complaint with this. So the use of plastic is fine, it makes it light, but you will hear some creaks in it when holding it sometimes. So it doesn't fit on perfectly. It seems to just clip in place. And it does give the tablet a bit of a cheap feel, and so do the buttons on the right hand side here. So the volume up and down and the power button, those are also made out of plastic, adding to that kind of cheaper feel. So down the bottom, there is no ports or microphone there. You'll see we do have one loudspeaker on here. Luckily, it is quite loud, but it does lack bass, of course. Normally the speakers in these tablets aren't going to be great. So I'll give you a sample of that later on. Along the front, the glass on here too, I wanted to point out, is 2.5D with the rounded edges. They advertise that, but the bezels do look a lot larger than some of their press material advertising really slim looking bezels. So you may be a little bit misled by that. It's quite a common practice now that manufacturers are doing this, and I'm really against this because it's not great to be misleading your customers there with that. So the ROM it has on here is a stock Android 7 ROM. It doesn't have any bloatware installed. Well, it's got ES File Explorer, which tends to nag you with a couple of little messages popping up. So I just uninstalled that, and it's not too bad. So performance of the ROM isn't bad. It's smooth, but I have noticed a tiny little bit of stuttering and lag. It's certainly not as fast as the MTK 8176, that hexa-core chipset that I reviewed in the likes of the TechGlass Master T8. The Hi9 comes in Chuwi's typical box, the brown one, so very similar to the Hi12 or Hi13 box. And we have the tablet here in a plastic sleeve. It comes with a pre-applied screen protector. We get some instruction manual here, warranty card in English and in Chinese. And then of course the power supply. So this power supply is rated to 5 volts, 3 amps, and they include a black micro USB 2 cable. On first boot of the device, you'll have around 3 gigabytes free, and storage you get approximately 53 gigabytes of that 64. The Antutu score puts it slightly above the Snapdragon 625 powered Lenovo tablets that I've looked at, the 8-inch ones. Here's the Geekbench 4 score, which is decent for this chipset. And the wireless speeds, when you're in the same room as the router, it performs really quite well and decent, good speeds. But I did notice that the range isn't particularly good, even though when I was looking under wireless analyzer that the signal strength was still okay. When I was further away, speeds absolutely plummeted. So this was about 3 rooms away from the router and going through about 2 walls. Other tablets that I have tested normally do quite well in this test, but for some reason the Hi9 didn't fare very well here. Now for sensors, all we have is the accelerometer, ambient light sensor, and a proximity sensor. So there's no GPS and no compass, and also, as you've seen in the start, there's no micro HDMI out on this tablet. Now looking at the internal storage, you'll see that these speeds here are rather low. So it's using a cheap eMMC 4.5 spec one, not the fastest I have seen. Quite slow really when you look at these specs here. So sequential read of only 41 and sequential writes of only 39. Now on to battery life. So this here is a little bit disappointing compared to other tablets I have reviewed in this price range and around 8 inches. So my battery life here, you can see there, the averages per complete charge, and this is the full charge that I did. Battery life, I managed to get 6 hours and 32 minutes with an on-screen time of 6 hours and 16 minutes. At the moment, I've had the screen on now, but I've been playing a lot of games, and it's 3 hours and 39 minutes it's been on. But I've only got 39%, actually 35% battery left. So this is looking like about 5 hours of this charge. So you're looking anywhere from around 5 to 6 hours only. And I'm keeping the brightness at about 35%. So quite disappointing. eBooks and your PDFs, rather large ones that I'm testing right here at the moment. They do look really nice on this screen because it's so sharp with this resolution. Performance is okay, and I didn't notice any real lag here. Now when you skip ahead, of course, it's going to take a little while to start to catch up. That is pretty much normal and standard here with an Android device with this spec. Now onto gaming performance. With this high resolution and the chipset it has in here, it does struggle a little bit when it comes to frame rates on certain titles. For example, Shadow Fight 3 I found is a little bit laggy and slow. However, when I played World of Tanks Blitz, that one seems quite playable, the frame rate is smooth, and then when I tested out Hit as well, you can see here that it's very playable and smooth. So in general, all games are going to be playable, but some of the more demanding games will have a little bit of lag and stutter. And when you start the game, even after about 10 minutes, it does get rather warm around this area here. We'll have a look at what temperature it is. It's about 41 degrees, but I've actually seen that get up to about 45, but that was after 30 minutes of continual gaming. Now, Chrome performance I've found has been quite decent. It's good. The scrolling speed seems quite fluid, and my website here isn't exactly the lightest. There's a lot of images on here, and even swapping between the tabs and things seems to be pretty quick. So I am happy with the Chrome performance. At least this is working quite well on the tablet. And using the Android 7 split screen feature, this also works quite well, I found. Now, depending on what you're doing, it will slow down a little as expected because it's twice as demanding for the CPU and the GPU to have to render all of this in there, but it seems to work well. So the rear camera can shoot up to 1080p maximum resolution, and as expected for a tablet, the quality is quite poor. Now, this often happens. The focus just goes completely out, and you need to then tap the screen to focus, but it won't focus. It just takes a screenshot then. So very poor cameras on this tablet. And the front-facing camera, 2 megapixels, it only shoots up to VGA resolution, so it does look quite blocky, pixelated, and generally quite poor in terms of camera performance. So we have that single loudspeaker on the back of it. I would rather have seen dual loudspeakers, but it is loud, I'll give them that. The quality is not really that amazing, but I'll give you a sample of it now. Now, testing out video streaming services, it was working okay, but this often happened. Internet connection error. It would just drop the wireless connection and then within about 10 seconds connect up again. It's a real pain, but when it is working and you're close enough to your wireless router, then yes, you can stream video using streaming services like Amazon Prime here. Just don't expect it to be trouble-free. So just to recap here, the display is the nicest part of this tablet. It is really great. It is good considering the price of this tablet, but is let down by this plastic build that does feel a little bit cheap in hand. You hear a little bit of creaking. Now I've noticed that the wireless range, when you're close enough or in the same room or just the room next to your wireless router, performance is decent and very fast. But when I did my test here, my range test to move just right down to the other side of the apartment here, speeds really dropped off and it became very slow and started to drop the wireless connection now and then, which is not great at all to see. Now, there's another area that's really quite bad, the cameras. Now, most people overlook cameras on tablets and won't be bothered by that, but they are quite bad on this particular model here. Another thing is the chipset they use. So the 8173 is an okay chipset if it was pushing a 1080p screen, but this isn't. This is now 2560 by 1600, and I feel a better match for that would have been the MediaTek MTK 8176 with 2 more cores, so a hexa-core. And I found that when I used the TechTablets Master T8, that tablet was just a lot smoother. So gaming performance on this isn't the greatest. You notice there's quite a bit of slowdown and sluggishness in the frames. The frame rate just dips a little bit too much for my liking. Now it is playable at least. You can play these games, but it just won't give you the best experience out there. Now the internal storage as well is a little bit slow. They've gone with a cheap eMMC 4.5 spec one, so not great speeds from that either. Battery life also disappoints as well, around 6 hours, 6.5 hours of on-screen time. So overall, as a package, I feel, there are better options out there. So take a look at the Lenovo tablets that I reviewed, for example, and you've also got that TechTablets Master T8, which has metal build to it and a very similar screen that's in it as well, and just a little bit more smoother, and they sell for about the same price, so definitely hunt around. But if you can pick it up for a decent price and you're not too bothered about the cons that I mentioned, then by all means, yeah, okay, go for it, but just consider those models there. Thanks a lot for watching this review. If you haven't seen my review of the other models I just mentioned, then make sure you check them out here and here. And if you're new to the channel, you like this kind of review that I have, the style, then why don't you think about subscribing, because I will have plenty more up and coming, and I cover lots of things. I cover drones, electric scooters, laptops, notebooks, you name it, quite a few things there in tech. So I do hope to see you back in the channel. Thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.